Happy end of 2020, Dan. We got through 2020, which I don't think I've ever waited for the end of a year as much as I've waited for this one.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I can't believe it's almost over. This year has been both fast and slow. Like, do you remember the Australian wildfires? That was this year.
Oh my gosh.
It's
that
so
just
crazy.
Feels forever.
Yeah.
It does. A lot of times as I get older, I think the years go faster. But you're right. This year just seems like it dragged on forever. When I think of things that I was doing at the beginning of 2020, it feels like a couple of years ago, as opposed to just less than a year ago.
Yeah, no, for sure. And but on the flip side, 2020 has been awesome for Star Trek. I mean, we can count our blessings there. We've had 4 Star Trek series air during the year 2020, which blows my mind.
Let's talk about that on today's show. Welcome everyone to Positively Trek, which started in 2020. So that's another big
That's
thing
true,
right
yeah.
there.
That's the big Star Trek happening for the month of March, actually.
Yes, that really is. And the original hosts that launched the show are still on the show. And that's me, Bruce Gibson, with Dan Gunther. And Dan, summarize 2020.
So, man, summarize 2020. Wow. How many words do you want? Do you want a 20,000 page essay?
Just your reaction right there says it all. Says it all right there. I really feel like we should be wearing masks during this episode just in honor of 2020.
It's probably not a bad idea.
Can you imagine listening to a podcast of people wearing masks and it's a little muffled like that through the whole episode?
Yeah, that would be a little not that great audio experience, I think.
No, but there'll be less popping with the P's if
That's
people
true.
wear masks,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it'll help slow down the plosives.
Exactly. But you mentioned earlier 4 Star Trek series in 2020. So those are Picard, Star Trek Picard. We got the premiere of that.
Yep.
We had Star Trek Lower Decks, the premiere of that series.
Yes, indeed.
Star Trek Discovery Season 3.
Yep, that's correct.
And I'm trying to think of the 4th. I'm guessing Short Treks?
Yeah. So the way that our Star Trek year started out, January 9th, we got the Star Trek Short Treks episode, Children of Mars, premiered. That was in January of 2020. So our Star Trek year started with a Short Trek episode.
Yeah, I do remember that, which is strange because that was also our first glimpse towards Picard, because it kind of was setting things up that what we were going to see in Star Trek Picard. But yeah, you're right. We had the last of that second round of Short Treks appeared in January. So yeah, that was our first new Star Trek on screen for the year, which is funny how it's not on the Blu-ray set of Short Treks. Right.
Now, I can't remember. Is it on the Picard Blu-ray set? I believe it is.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just interesting they didn't keep it with Short Treks.
Yeah.
But yeah, January was, a good start to the year. We also got the 3rd issue of Star Trek Picard Countdown from IDW. That was a good thing.
I remember that. Oddly enough, after the start of the show.
Exactly. Okay. So my memories are coming back at the beginning of 2020. It was all about building up to Picard. I just remember that whole build up like, oh, we got this little glimpse from Children of Mars. We're getting the Countdown comics. We've got this novel coming out. The series is about to premiere. Okay, 2020 starting off pretty good, Dan. I think it looks bright for the rest of the year.
Oh, little did we know. But 2020 was pretty bright, like I said, for Star Trek. So, it did continue on. In February, we saw, more episodes of Star Trek Picard after it finally premiered on January 23rd. So I still remember sitting down to watch that first episode and that first shot seeing the Enterprise D. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Oh gosh, yeah. And seeing Data, it was like, wow. It's like we're back on TNG briefly at the beginning of that episode. And then we get to the vineyards and everything. I mean, it's just we're not going to go deep into Picard right now, but yeah, I mean that was interesting because the feel and tone of Picard really is different from any other Star Trek series. So it did take a little getting used to.
Definitely the most different Star Trek series we've gotten, I think, but one that I'm happy is part of the Star Trek canon now. I really enjoy its place in Star Trek history.
Same here. Absolutely. Also, in February, we got the premiere of The Ready Room with Will Wheaton, and I have enjoyed that show. I don't get to watch it necessarily before we record a review of Discovery. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But it's a nice companion to Discovery or Lower Decks or whatever series is on, or Picard, when you watch an episode and then Will gets to interview somebody from the cast or someone behind the scenes.
Yeah, I watched a lot more of The Ready Room during Star Trek Picard. I haven't really been watching it during Discovery. It's a little harder to see here in Canada. There are ways to easily see it legally. I just, have to go a little bit out of my way and go to the Star Trek website. I know that's not a huge deal, but for whatever reason, I haven't gotten into it as much with Discovery, but I remembered watching a lot of them during the run of Picard.
So for you can access it on StarTrek.com. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I usually watch on YouTube, but I guess it's blocked for you.
Right. I mean, I could load up a VPN and tell the internet that I'm in the United States, but it's blocked if I don't do that.
How dare they? I don't like that, but yeah, at least it's on StarTrek.com. That's good. So you can see it there. And, I was telling Dan before the show, I do get a little annoyed. I don't like it when Will starts off the show saying, "Hey, nerds." I don't like to be called a nerd. That just doesn't work for me. But.
Yeah, I think he's trying to retake the name. I don't mind it so much, but I can definitely see why somebody might be annoyed with it.
Yeah, you can call me a Star Trek nerd. That I can live with, but just nerd in general, I just want to say don't call me a nerd, Will. But maybe I'm sensitive to it because maybe I really am a nerd. So okay. Anyway, I'll get through it. But also in February, we got the novel from Una McCormack that is connected to Star Trek Picard, and that is The Last Best Hope. And we got to interview her about that novel when we were still on Literary Treks.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and a hardcover Star Trek novel release, which is one of the firsts for quite a while. I was really happy to read that book and to get to talk to Una McCormack. And we've got a second Star Trek Picard novel coming out almost a year later in January by James Swallow. So kind of a little bit of synchronicity there is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and we'll probably reach out to James and see if he'll come on and talk about that on our book show. But yeah, then we've got March, and we continued with Picard for a while. We had another novel from Christopher L. Bennett, a TOS novel called The Higher Frontier. That was a good one. We also had a book from Dayton Ward of Kirk Fu Manual. We had that, which I'm still practicing my Kirk Fu moves right now.
Yeah, it's a good time in quarantine to practice your Kirk Fu. Absolutely.
Well, I don't necessarily want to go and hit every month. We might be here for a while, but we did have The Unsettling Stars by Alan Dean Foster, which was our first adult novel that ties into the Kelvin universe or the Kelvin timeline. Really cool. Yeah.
And written almost a decade earlier and just now finally released.
Yes, exactly. Which we were like, I've been waiting for 10 years for that book. And then finally we got it. So before I go any further, I do want to point out we will also this year celebrate the 25th anniversary of Voyager.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big celebration. And of course, a release of a Voyager Celebration book by Ben Robinson of Hero Collector in kind of lieu of the fact that we couldn't have these big conventions to celebrate Voyager's 25th anniversary, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, but I have enjoyed the online things. I mean, it's like these mini virtual conventions that are going on, and I'm seeing more of this than I would if I've gone to conventions.
That's true, too. I mean, it's the first that I ever really got to see a San Diego Comic-Con panel, really, because I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con, and I'm not likely to go anytime soon. So this is the closest I've ever come to actually attending.
Yeah, same here. I've never been. But yeah, I guess I can say I virtually have attended one of them now. So it'll be interesting to see if it'll be up and going in 2021. It's going to be in that summer time frame of like we're kind of getting over this hump. We're going to see how that plays out next year. But yeah, we also had a novel by Dayton Ward, Agents of Influence, that came out. Die Standing, a Discovery novel by John Jackson Miller, also came out in July this past summer. And of course, we cannot forget, we got Lower Decks, which honestly, every time I think of Lower Decks now, I think how I said, oh, I know it's not going to be my favorite Star Trek series. It's going to be on the bottom of the list. Not to say that I won't like it, but it's not live action Star Trek. It's kind of a parody and stuff. But I'm really starting to, the more I watched it and the more I think back on it, the more I'm just like, no, I'll put it up there with any other Star Trek, any of them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. There's so many great moments from the course of that first season. I really, really enjoyed it. I think the second half of the season is where I really fell in love with it. And you've got an interesting news item, which we'll talk about, the best and worst moments of Star Trek on television. And Lower Decks made that list. I won't spoil yet if that's the best or the worst side, but no, I'm just kidding. It's on the best side. And I actually really agree that episode that moment comes from is my favorite episode of the series so far.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to that in a moment. But I've been very happy with Lower Decks. I'm really looking forward to the next season, which they are in production with right now. So really good.
Ooh, so exciting.
I know. I can't wait. We're getting so much Star Trek stuff. I'm really excited that's like you said, there's good and bad to 2020, but this was definitely a good Star Trek year for all the new Star Trek stuff that we got, which we just talked about earlier. But
I do have to say shout out to international viewers as well. We're not forgetting you. We know you didn't get to see Lower Decks at that same time, but you will soon, most of you, later in January. So yeah, just wanted to put that in there because invariably someone will comment in the comments that they didn't get to see it, and totally understand and definitely feel your pain. But soon.
If you're going to make a list of things that sucked in 2020 in Star Trek, that would be one of them. Not getting Lower Decks internationally. That really
absolutely
sucks. Well, but we also got the comic series from Deep Space Nine, Too Long a Sacrifice, which we recently reviewed. That was a good series.
Mm-hmm. A lot of fun. Really always happy to see new Deep Space Nine stuff.
Yeah. And then we got David Mack with his Kelvin Timeline novel, More Beautiful Than Death. So that was our second novel in that timeline, which is great. Again, waiting 10 years for that to happen. And we also had Star Trek Hell's Mirror from IDW about Khan. That was a good issue too.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
And then, Dan, we cannot forget our Star Trek Voyager novel, To Lose the Earth by Kirsten Beyer.
Absolutely.
Which we had been waiting for a couple years for that one too.
Yeah, that one was definitely a long time coming. So happy to finally see that published and kind of wrap up the Voyager relaunch story under Kirsten Beyer. She's, of course, been so busy at being one of the writers on Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. And so, yeah, she's definitely understandably taken a while to get that novel written, but we finally got it in 2020.
Yes. And for those who haven't read that novel, just so you know, if you're into the novel continuity Trekverse, something, she kind of sets things up in there to kind of resolve how this continuity fits into the current continuity with Picard and Lower Decks in that timeline. So we'll kind of see how that works out as new books come out, which hopefully we'll see in 2021. And of course, we also saw the season 3 premiere of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah, so that's been the big thing lately, of course. October saw the beginning of the third season of Discovery, kind of a reboot for the show almost. Definitely a changed premise for the show, and really enjoying it so far as we're kind of nearing the end of the season now.
Absolutely. I'm loving Discovery. Each season to me gets better. So I'm really anxious to see how that concludes in season 3. We also got the novel A Contest of Principles by Greg Cox, and he joined us on the show to discuss that.
Very timely novel given the U.S. election happening at the time that it was published as well. Kind of inadvertently good timing or bad timing, depending on your point of view, I guess, for Greg Cox in that novel.
I know. How strange. That was really strange.
Very, very weird.
But yeah, a lot of good things in Star Trek. I don't know if we're missing anything. Of course, there's sad things too. There have been multiple deaths of people associated with Star Trek. We're not going to go through the whole list. I don't want to bring things down. I don't know if there's anybody you want to point out, Dan, but we've called out some people as things happened throughout the year.
It's one of those things where Star Trek is getting to an age, I think, where we're seeing a lot of people from the early days and kind of the older generation of folks involved with Star Trek passing away, and even some of the younger folks, unfortunately, as well. So, tragedies and the like do happen. It's definitely sad to lose some of these names that are associated with Star Trek, but I have an idea, by the way, for an episode, and I'm going to talk to you about it after we're done. It's an episode that I kind of want to do after Discovery is done its season, so very early in 2021. And part of that episode might involve a kind of in memoriam section. But anyway, we'll talk about that later.
I am writing down to make sure I do not forget to ask you after the show what you want to do, because I'm really curious. And I bet everybody listening wants to know too. So hopefully we'll know something soon on that. So yeah, that was 2020. Real quick, Star Trek Voyager 7's Reckoning, that IDW comic premiered last month. We're going to review that when all the issues come out sometime here in the next month or two. So that is
absolutely
coming.
I've heard good things about that because I guess the Trek Untold podcast, we had Matthew Kaplowitz on a couple of weeks ago, and he did an episode where he interviewed the writer of that comic series, and it was before any of it had come out, so or maybe only the first issue had come out, so there's some tantalizing little previews for what's to come in that series. I'm really excited to read that. I haven't even read the first issue yet.
I haven't either. I'm kind of saving it for when the others come out, but see, when we talk about it, then I'm like, no, maybe I want to go ahead and read it now, because now that I'm thinking about it, I want to go into it. I don't know. There's so much reading. We do so much reading on the show. It's crazy. I'm reading 2 Star Trek novels at the same time right now. And in addition to that, I'm reading 2 Star Wars novels at the same time. I usually don't have that happening, but just for some reason, I've got 4 novels going on at the same time.
Oh, wow. I haven't done that for a long time.
Yeah, I typically don't, but it just kind of worked out that way. But I'll get through it, people. I'll get through it. I just know I will. So
careful. If you've got 4 going on at the same time, that can get a little confusing. I'm not looking forward to the book club podcast where we're talking about how Captain Georgiou ended up on Batuu to trade a lightsaber with... Wait, no, that's the other book. Hold on.
Right, exactly. It gets a little bit much. Yeah. So let's talk a little more about 2020, because we have an article here from IO9's website Gizmodo. They did a best and worst TV moments of 2020. And so they have a list of several TV episodes that are in the sci-fi fantasy realm that they list as best and worst. And so it's not just Star Trek. There's other things in there from other shows like The Expanse and The Mandalorian, Doctor Who, and so on and so forth. The Outsider, Rick and Morty is even there. Anyway, there's a bunch of stuff. Anything that came out in 2020 in that genre. So let's look at the best list, because there were 2 Star Trek episodes that came out this year that fell into their best list. And at the top of the list, and I don't think these are in any order from ranking the best to the least best or whatever, but the first one they have listed is from Star Trek Lower Decks. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have an episode of Lower Decks on the best list, which Dan was talking about earlier, that he's very excited about.
Yeah, from my favorite episode of Lower Decks, Crisis Point, the penultimate episode of the first season of Lower Decks. And this is a great moment. It's Mariner versus Hollow Mariner, and that kind of scene where we delve into the psychology of Mariner, I guess, and they're fighting each other on the crashed USS Cerritos. All of this, of course, taking place on the holodeck. But I love that episode. It's just such a great episode of Lower Decks, and I love that this made the list.
I know, and especially that they start off the list with this. Out of all the different series on there, they're starting it with Lower Decks. I really love this episode, too. I haven't watched Lower Decks recently. I've been really itching to start going back and watching some episodes again. Have you watched any recently?
I've watched a few, just kind of like Zoom calls with friends who haven't watched the whole thing, and I'm like, oh, I'll watch that episode with you, kind of thing. And yeah, so I've rewatched the series fairly recently with one friend, and it holds up. I really love that show.
Well, the next one on the list, Star Trek Picard. They got one on the best list, and it's the episode of 7 of 9 in Stardust City Rag. And they love the fact that she went after Bjayzl and got her revenge on her.
Yeah, that's definitely a great moment for the character of 7 of 9, especially within that episode. I don't know that it's... I wouldn't even pick it as my favorite moment in Star Trek Picard, I don't think, but it is definitely a really good moment, and I can see why someone would include it on this list for sure.
I mean, I could too, but I like that episode just in general for other reasons. I just thought it was a very interesting episode, a very different episode in Picard. I think there's a lot of mixed reactions in the fan community about this episode and how 7 of 9 handles herself in this. But, we're seeing a 7 of 9 that is dealing with a different situation than she's been in when she was on Voyager, and she's in the Alpha Quadrant, and she's dealing with a lot of what is going on with the Borg and how people with Borg implants like her are being treated, and what happened to Icheb and what Bjayzl is doing and selling Borg parts. And I mean, she's kind of on her own, and she's part of some kind of Rangers or something?
The Fenris Rangers. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just seeing Picard act like this French guy who's looking to sell and buy and all these things with the patch, and they're all playing these different roles. I liked the episode. I mean, I don't know. I would say it's my favorite of the Picard episodes, but it would probably be in my top 3 or 4, probably. Yeah.
It's definitely up there for sure. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. And 7 of 9 herself, I think, was one of the high points of the Star Trek Picard series as well. I really enjoyed seeing Jerry Ryan reprise that role again, and she really does kill it as 7 of 9.
Yes. So we have another episode, but not in the best list. Those are the 2 that made the best. We have one that fell into the worst list. I mean, it's sad to think that there's a Star Trek episode that would fall into the worst list, but I understand the reasons that maybe this person or the people who put this list together didn't quite like this one, and it's the last episode of Star Trek Picard. And I think that for the most part, it sounds like they like the episode, they just don't like how Picard comes back. That, he sacrifices himself, and it's almost like maybe this series should have just ended there with Picard's sacrifice, but it's like a cheap trick to bring him back into an android body.
Yeah, I mean, I can also see how somebody might not really enjoy this whole storyline. I still don't completely know how I feel about it. It does feel like a little bit of a cheat to get, Patrick Stewart back on screen, as well as have like the pathos of him sacrificing himself and that sort of thing. So, I don't know. There's definitely a debate also about the actual mechanism of how this was done. And I'm going to put in a little plug here for episode 8 of our series, Positively Trek, where we talk about the whole situation with Picard and the android body. Episode 7, I should say, of Positively Trek, but is he still Picard? So very early on, we had kind of a philosophical question about that. So if nothing else, we got a great episode of Positively Trek out of it.
And it also reminds me of our recent episode of Spock Must Die, when we're talking about,
are you still,
or do you kill yourself each time you're beamed? Are you dead and recreated? And that whole philosophy about the transporter. So Yeah, it's those conversations I really enjoy getting into. But yeah, those are your best and worst. So, hey, you know what? I would say, first of all, they recognize Star Trek in this list. And I'm glad that 2 made best and only 1 made worst. And it's only made worse because of how an episode ended. So that's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I'll take it.
Yes. So talking about new Star Trek, we have John Delancey out there talking about Star Trek. And there's little rumblings now in fandom and on these Star Trek news sites that we could see Q coming back. Because John Delancey has been involved in something called Cameo.com. It's a place where celebrities can post videos, personalized videos for people who I guess purchase it. I've never done it. I'm not really that familiar with it, Dan. I mean, if I knew about this, I would be buying you personalized videos from John Delancey all the time. But he put together a video for Christmas from a father to a son. And he starts off saying Q here, a.k.a. John Delancey, and he begins talking about Star Trek The Next Generation and da-da-da-da, and how great Star Trek is and blah, 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 and Christmas. And then he says, a voice behind my shoulder said, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. It was Gene Roddenberry. And I ask, what are you talking about? And he goes, oh, you'll find out. And here it is, 34 years later, and I'm finding out. Oh, and by the way, here's a little stocking stuffer. You are going to be seeing more of me. Cheers, Merry Christmas, and let's just cross our fingers that 2021 is going to be better. It just has to be better than 2020. So, of course, the focus of this message he gave, that was not really my imitation of John Delancey, but whatever. But the focus of what he's saying is you're going to be seeing more of me. We're going to be seeing more of him. What did he mean by that, Dan? What do you think John Delancey is getting at here? Did he give us a clue that he's going to appear on like on a live action Star Trek series?
It's possible. That would be cool. I feel like he'd be a good fit for Star Trek Picard, right? I mean, the last time we saw Q and Picard together was All Good Things. And he says, and if you're very lucky, I may drop in to say hello from time to time. And that was kind of my John Delancey impression, but not really.
That was good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. But yeah, I would love to see him interact with Picard again, personally. It could also mean just that he's going to pop up on Lower Decks again, even though he does say you're going to see me. That might be us kind of putting emphasis on just the way he phrased it or something. So he might just be again in Lower Decks in animated form, but maybe I'd love to see him in Picard.
I would love to see him in Picard too, if it makes sense. Don't just shoehorn him in there just to have him in there. But I would think that if he's going to show up in Picard, that is going to be very well protected. Mm-hmm. And he would not even give such a hint. I mean, maybe, but I really think this has to do with Lower Decks, because I think he probably feels comfortable enough saying that we may be seeing more of him, meaning seeing Q in Lower Decks. And because he'd already appeared on Lower Decks, I think we already know, or there's speculation that we are going to see him again in Lower Decks.
That would be cool. I hope so. I hope that we do see him again. That would be neat. I'm looking at this message again, and I'm wondering, like, it could be really innocuous. So he says, oh, and by the way, here's a little stocking stuffer. You are going to be seeing more of me. So maybe the dad just paid for more messages that will be delivered later to this particular kid.
Oh my gosh, you may be right. That could be it. He could have paid for John Delancey to do a New Year's message too, that he's going to give him later.
That's probably it. Oh, how sad would that be? I mean, great for that kid. That's awesome. But
I hope that's it. I mean, I would love to see Q back, but, you know, I think it would be kind of funny that we're all like, oh, speculating. And all he's doing is talking about doing another message to this guy's son.
Yep.
So, yes, I'm sure we're going to see Q again somewhere, somehow, someday. I don't doubt it. Where? I don't know. But yeah, we're going to see him again. I don't know.
I think so too.
I think it's going to be Lower Decks. That's my prediction.
That to me seems most likely for sure.
If it's going to be Picard, I would say it would be at the very last episode as a teaser, almost like how we got in Lower Decks. It was in the last season episode of that. But the series finale, not the series, the season finale of Picard, maybe at the end of season 2. But I don't think he's going to really show up on Picard unless it's in season 3 or later. I don't expect to see him in season 2 unless it's a tease at the end. Yeah. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, with the fact that Guinan's going to be in season 2 of Picard, I don't know. I'd like to see those two on screen together again. So
right?
I don't know. It would be cool. I would be so there for it if it happened.
Yes. Well, we got one more story that we want to touch on before we close out this episode and close out 2020. And it's a bit of a sad note in a sense, but also a very happy note at the end too. And it's about James Doohan, who played Scotty. So, Dan, you were telling me earlier that his ashes were smuggled into space.
Yeah. So this is, kind of an older story, but it's one that didn't really come to light for the general public until the last few days. And it's interesting because Chris Doohan, James Doohan's son, posted on Twitter a few days ago saying that he had a Star Trek secret, a story that he had kept secret for 12 years. And of course, then the speculation starts running rampant. What could it be? What was 12 years ago? Okay, so 2008, ramping up for the Star Trek 2009 film, maybe something to do with that. But it turns out that, James Doohan's ashes were smuggled aboard the International Space Station 12 years ago in 2008 by entrepreneur Richard Garriott. A kind of a space tourist of the time, basically, who went aboard the ISS, and he smuggled aboard a small collection of James Doohan's ashes aboard the space station. And apparently, I don't know, did the statute of limitations for the crime of sneaking stuff aboard the space station, did that run out? I'm not sure why they had to wait until now to reveal it, but apparently now's the time that, they've released this story that this was done.
So when I first saw this story, I thought it was old because I thought his ashes were taken to space, but they were brought back, right? Initially.
Right. He was initially sent up on a rocket in 2007, launched from New Mexico. But apparently after they returned to Earth, the ashes were lost, I believe, is what I'm seeing in a lot of these stories. But this was a little bit more of a permanent residency in space, or a longer term residency anyway.
I'm just trying to figure out how this went down. Like, did Chris Doohan
right?
go up to Garrett and go, hey, I know you're about to go up, but hey, here, I got something for you. And just slowly hands him this little vial or something. It's like, these are my dad ashes. Take him up there and just dump him out into space somewhere.
That's kind of what it sounds like, is that this guy was approached by the family to take this up. And apparently it was hidden beneath the cladding of one of the modules in the International Space Station. So beneath the floorboards, basically.
Wow. That's so interesting. So, wow. Yeah, I guess it was really important for the family to get his ashes up there and just stay up there. So I guess that really meant a lot to James Doohan to not just get his ashes in space, but keep them up there.
Yeah.
So, well, that's interesting. That's great. So, Dan, would you want your ashes in space? How do you, what, tell us what you want us to do with your body.
I don't know. It's actually not something I've given a lot of thought to. I mean, I'm going to be beyond caring at that point, probably. Right. So, I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of expense and stuff with trying to get it to space. I'm like, reserve that weight for other stuff that is important, I guess. I know a little tiny thing of ashes isn't going to take up a lot of room, but I'm like, no, I'm not that important. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. For me, it's like, well, I'm gone. I don't even know what's happening. And if it's even not all my ashes, just a part of me, it's like, what? It's just like my hand floating out in space as ashes. Or maybe it's another part of me that I really don't want to be taken out there. I don't know. I mean, if anything, maybe I just want my whole body out there floating around, and then like one day, some alien race discovers humanity because they found my frozen body, and that makes me something really important to First Contact.
Could be. I mean, I don't want to see that memorial, what the statue to that event would look like. I don't need to see that, but that's cool.
This alien race finds it. They're like, well, what do you think their race is called? And they're like, I think their species is called the Positively Trek.
You're wearing one of our t-shirts, I'm assuming.
Yes. Okay, no, we don't have t-shirts, at least not yet. If anybody starts going, wait, how do I get one of these t-shirts?
But hey, if you guys want t-shirts, let us know.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a t-shirt. Or maybe a tie. I don't wear ties anymore. Okay, just real side note. When I first started working professionally in the 90s, I used to always have to wear a tie to work. Even to the point that sometimes after work, I'd stop at the grocery store and people would ask me where things were in the grocery store because I was wearing a tie. They thought I was the manager. I'd always have to take my tie off before I went in the grocery store. But I hardly ever wear ties. I probably wear a tie. I don't know. I can probably count on one hand how many times I wear a tie in a year. And my parents got me a tie for Christmas. They're like, do you have a tie like that? And I'm like, no, but I'm thinking, when would I ever wear it?
I can tell exactly how many times I wore a tie this year, and that was once on my wedding on July 25th.
Yeah. That's like when I wear a tie. It's like to something like an event like that. Mm-hmm. But for my job, no. I mean, it doesn't happen very often anymore. So I'm not complaining. I don't like wearing ties. They choke me too much. So, but I'm fine with wearing a tie with my body floating out into space.
I wonder, does somewhere like Cafe Press do custom ties? Could we put out a Positively Trek tie?
I don't know. It would be unique, wouldn't it? But who's going to wear a tie? I think we should come out with Positively Trek flip-flops. I don't think anybody... Yeah, no other podcast does that.
Yeah.
So, none that I'm aware of. Come on, Trek Geeks. I challenge you. Come out with Trek Geeks flip-flops. Trek Geeks flip-flops that one says Trek and the other one says Geeks.
There you go. Yeah.
Or absolutely. One says Bill and the other one says Dan. I'm just saying this in case they're listening. Bill, I'm looking at you right now. I'm really testing to see if you're listening right now. If you are, you got to tweet me or message me. So, anyway. But that ends 2020, Dan. We're done. We got through the year and the show's still going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, this is 77th episode? That's crazy. Yes. So 77 episodes in 2020. And we started in March. So we've really put in our time on this, I think. So even if we'd started on the 1st of January and done one a week, we would have only been up to 52. So you can tell we're putting in our work on this.
I know. How crazy are we? I mean, in just a few months, we'll reach episode 100. And we've only been on for less than a year right now.
We need to think of something to do for episode 100. That's going to be a fun one.
Yes. Maybe we'll just make t-shirts on that episode.
Our top 100 episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah, we'll do something like that. And you know what? For that event, I will wear a tie.
Ooh, okay. Well, I might have to dig out a tie as well.
Well, Dan, where can people find you online if you're wearing a tie or not?
Well, whether or not I'm dressed formally, I only sit down to compose tweets in a completely formal no, I'm just kidding. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Kertrats. That's KERTRATS. You can also find me on youtube.com/Kertrats Productions, making videos about Star Trek mostly, but other stuff as well. And of course, just search for Kertrats basically anywhere. Kertrats47 on Instagram. You'll probably find me.
And you can find me on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. And you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at Admiral Rex. You can find me on Goodreads. I'm on there too. And you can find us, the show, on Twitter at Positively Trek. We're also on Instagram. Join our Facebook discussion group. Look for us on Facebook and ask to join the group and be involved in the conversations. And you can send us an email, positivelytrek@gmail.com. So thank you everyone for listening. Here's to 2020. See ya. Goodbye year. And now here's to 2021, and let's make it a positive one and always stay positive.